Fair use. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing.
If you're a fan of eerie tales, then you need to watch this. From ghostly whispers in Charleston's alleys to the elusive lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp, we uncover the creepiest myths and legends of South Carolina. Subscribe now and explore the secrets that lie beneath.
In Richland County tonight, authorities have confirmed that an armored car servicing company was robbed late Friday night as it refueled at a Columbia gas station. Investigators say the robbers made off with nearly $10 million of the cash load. One guard was beaten and bound in the attack, and a major manhunt is underway. We'll bring updates as they come in.
In May 2007, Columbia, South Carolina stood as a mid-sized southern capital city, a place of history, college life, and pockets of economic struggle. It was a city of contrasts. Stately government buildings sat near working-class neighborhoods. University of South Carolina students mingled with longtime residents, and crime, though not rampant, was ever present in the margins. Richland County law enforcement agencies were well established, and the city was no stranger to occasional high-profile robberies. But nothing since memory compared with what was about to unfold. An armored truck heist so audacious it would make national headlines, and later be ranked among the largest in U.S. history. The armored car company involved was Express Teller Armored Services, often referred to simply as Express Teller or Express Teller Services. At the time, Express Teller serviced ATMs and banks across the Southeast, moving large quantities of cash under high security. Interestingly, a key point that attracted investigators early was this: armored trucks generally carry sufficient fuel to run their routes without needing to stop at gas stations. That the Express Teller truck did stop for fuel at the Circle K on Atlas and Bluff immediately drew suspicion. Columbia's roads at night, especially in the more rural outskirts and dirt roads out of sight from main arteries, offered dark cover. Fields, strawberry patches, back roads. These would become a stage for what would transpire. Meanwhile, relationships inside the armored services company itself would turn into the seedbed of betrayal. In the broader national context, armored car robberies are rare but high reward. In 2006, U.S. banks were robbed or broken into nearly 20 times per day, but only dozens of armored car robberies occurred. This heist would soon capture attention not just in South Carolina, but across the country. It was just past midnight on May 11, 2007 when the armored truck, under the cover of routine service, pulled into the Circle K station on Atlas and Bluff roads near Columbia. The night was quiet. The truck had 2 employees on board, David Jones and Darrell C. Frierson. Jones stepped out to refuel while Frierson remained in the cab. That's when 2 suspects, later identified as Dominic LaShawn Lyde and Jeremy McPhail, emerged from the shadows. Armed, masked, they approached and forced Jones back into the armored vehicle. The assault began. Jones was beaten, bloodied, bound with duct tape, and his face and jaw were smashed. Within the cab, Frierson's role is ambiguous at first glance. He claimed to be a victim, but investigators would later argue otherwise. He was forced by the assailants to drive the armored vehicle to a remote site on White House Road, where other conspirators waited. As they drove away, Jones was left bound and helpless. Frierson, apparently uninjured, accompanied the forced drive. At the remote site, at least 4 men unloaded the money from the armored vehicle into waiting vehicles. Yet in the darkness, Jones managed to slip free, or at least partially free himself, and crawled to safety. He made frantic calls to authorities from a nearby payphone, He described the interior of the cab, the trauma he had endured, and the names if he could recall them. Meanwhile, the robbers were racing against time, hauling crates, making decisions, and ordering others to stay back. But even in the night, mistakes would be made. In the aftermath, law enforcement would recover $2.7 million of the stolen $9.8 million, but more than half would remain missing. What made this crime remarkable and chilling was not just the sheer scale, but the betrayal from within. As investigators would soon discover, one of the guards, Daryl Frierson, had inside knowledge and likely played a crucial role in planning and execution. Once the crates of cash had been moved and the vehicles vanished into the night, the conspirators dispersed like shadows in separate directions. But their actions in the days that followed would reveal a mix of panic, bravado, and gullibility. Some bought extravagant items almost immediately. The local sheriff later remarked that the thieves indulged in strippers, tattoos, tennis shoes, even Mother's Day gifts. Some bought expensive rims for cheap cars, altered vehicles, electronics, and other flashy goods. One conspirator even got a spiderweb tattoo with dollar signs, perhaps as a macabre tribute to the money they had stolen. The conspicuous spending created a trail. Receipts, purchases, transactions, and associates they tried to bring in as co-conspirators or holders of cash. Some of the stolen cash was given to friends or family, hidden in homes, stashed in vehicles, or held by intermediate holders. One complicating twist: Derek Benjamin emerges in the aftermath. He was reportedly given responsibility to hold some of the stolen funds at MacPhail's direction. But rather than safeguarding the money, investigators say Benjamin stole from his co-conspirators. According to Sheriff Leon Lott, Benjamin took the stolen money from Jeremy MacPhail and fled. In the meantime, Dominic LaShawn Lyde stayed on the run. He altered his appearance, grew a beard, obtained a fake ID, and kept a low profile. He reportedly traveled across state lines, lived under assumed names, and tried to remain undetected. In one telling incident, Lyde checked into a motel in Fayetteville, North Carolina, with a stripper named Terry Pitts. On that stay, a police report was filed. Pitts alleged assault and that her car had been stolen. Investigators tracked Lyde there. When confronted, he confessed his true identity. A stolen handgun was found in the motel room, and Lyde was arrested by U.S. Marshals. Bond was denied, and Lyde was set to be extradited back to South Carolina. The others, meanwhile, were gradually rounded up. Their overconfident purchases, receipts, cell phone photos, some showing stacks of cash. Within days of the heist, arrests began. By May 16, 2007, just days after the robbery, law enforcement had arrested 5 suspects tied to the crime. Those arrested at that time included Daryl C. Frierson, age 21, of Columbia, SC, an express teller employee who would later be considered a central figure and insider. Dominique D. Blakeney, age 19, later cited as 21, of Darlington, SC, implicated in moving money and logistics. Kelby D. Blakeney, age 20, later 22, of Darlington, SC, Dominique's brother, involved in the transfer and concealment of funds. Jeremy M. MacPhail, age approximately 19, later noted as 21, from Society Hill, South Carolina, one of the alleged ground-level robbers. Paul J. Whitaker, age approximately 21, of Sumter, South Carolina, an express teller co-worker initially charged for conspiracy, not direct participation. One suspect remained at large, Dominic LaShawn Lyde, age approximately 22, of Darlington, South Carolina, charged with armed robbery, kidnapping, and assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature. Over the next months, Lyde was captured in North Carolina, as noted earlier. As for Derek Benjamin, he emerged in the aftermath as a fugitive suspected of looting from his co-conspirators. Warrants were later issued, and he too became a wanted man. Whitaker, despite being a company employee, pleaded guilty to conspiracy, but was not alleged to have been physically at the heist site. Some charges for Whitaker included conspiracy to commit armed robbery. The arrests triggered a wave of media coverage, internal investigations, interviews, and legal filings. Prosecutors began assembling evidence. Defense attorneys claimed youthful errors, misguided ambition, and attempts at mitigation. But the scale of the crime and the violence used would weigh heavily on public and judicial sentiment. As prosecutorial strategy unfolded, many of the suspects opted for plea deals. Their guilty pleas spared them lengthy trials, but not long prison sentences. By August 2009, sentencing had begun. Judge Michelle Childs presided over the case, carefully weighing the severity of the crime, roles of individuals, and the public's demand for justice. Here is a breakdown of what is publicly documented. Dominic LaShawn Lyde received 28 years for armed robbery and kidnapping, 10 years for assault and battery, and 5 years for criminal conspiracy. These sentences ran concurrently. Jeremy McPhail, 25 years for armed robbery and kidnapping, 10 years for assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature, and 5 years for conspiracy, all concurrent. Kelby Blakeney and Dominique Blakeney, both were initially sentenced to 25 years. Appeals for reduction were denied. Darrell C. Frierson, he was sentenced to an aggregate term of 35 years for armed robbery, kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, assault and battery. Paul J. Whitaker received 3 years for criminal conspiracy. He was not charged with the direct violent components. These sentences ran concurrently in many cases. That means, for some defendants, the maximum exposure did not stack but overlapped. Still, every major actor in the heist received at least 25 years imprisonment. Judge Childs, in her sentencing, emphasized the premeditated nature of the crime, the violent force used, and the betrayal of trust. She invoked the legal doctrine that the hand of one is the hand of all, meaning that all conspirators bore responsibility for the whole. Defense attorneys for several defendants pleaded for mercy. They painted their clients as misguided youth, coerced by peers, or as having limited prior records. One defense lawyer lamented that long sentences do not necessarily deter crime. Prosecutors, on the other hand, stressed that this was not a mere street robbery. It was one of the largest armored car heists in U.S. history. Over half the money remained missing, and the violence inflicted on the guard made the crime especially heinous. In their rulings, judges left no question. Over the years since sentencing, the paths of those involved have diverged. Here's what is publicly known, though in many cases details such as release dates, prison transfers, or post-prison life are not fully disclosed. Darrell C. Frierson remains in prison, serving his 35-year sentence. His appeal and post-conviction efforts were denied by the South Carolina Supreme Court. Dominic LaShawn Lyde is incarcerated, serving his sentence of 28 years, plus concurrent terms. Jeremy McPhail is also serving his sentence of 25 years, along with the additional concurrent terms. Kelby Blakeney and Dominique Blakeney remain imprisoned, both serving their 25-year sentences. Paul J. Whitaker, having received 3 years, may have already been released, depending on credit for time served, parole, or good behavior, though public sources do not clearly document his current status. Derek Benjamin, the man who allegedly stole from the stolen cash, remains, or had been, a fugitive for a time. In WACH media in 2014, Authorities described Benjamin as one of the 6 involved and stated they believed he had gone into hiding. As of the most recent public reporting, several $million of the stolen cash remain missing. Some small recoveries have come over the years. One report notes that another $2 million was recovered in a later operation. The case is often cited in South Carolina legal circles for its size, its inside betrayal, and in post-conviction debate about tracking devices, plea counsel, and rights issues. Fryerson's case in particular is studied in appellate law texts. The surviving victims, especially David Jones, have endured lasting trauma. Jones suffered broken bones, facial injuries, loss of teeth, and long-term psychological harm. In interviews years later, Jones admitted he still has nightmares and sleeps with heightened vigilance. Although decades may pass, the echoes of that night linger. In courtroom rulings, prison cells, and the memory of the city of Columbia itself. This was not a crime of opportunity. It was a betrayal from within. A job that should have been routine turned into a blueprint of greed, violence, and hubris. In the quiet night, men masked in fear and ambition struck. In the following days, their easy spending, their whispers, and their missteps led them into the arms of justice. But in the shadows remain unanswered questions. Where exactly did the missing millions go? Who else may still hold pieces of that loot? And perhaps most haunting, even after decades, how do you measure the cost exacted from the victim who walked into that night, never to come out the same? You, the viewer, may wonder, was this a heist of desperation or of arrogance? Was Frierson coerced or mastermind? The courts made their verdict. The sentences were handed down. Yet in the unknown reaches of missing money and hidden lives, the story still breathes.
If you don't like the dark but still crave a thrill, then delve into South Carolina's eerie past with us. Subscribe to South Carolina Secrets and uncover the legends lurking in the night. Have a story that chills you to the bone. Comment below with your haunting tales and what secrets we should unveil next, if you dare.